The city had never heard a scream like that before, sharp, desperate, and echoing through the long stretch of downtown traffic as cars screeched to a stop. On the hot pavement, a little blind girl in a blue dress knelt beside her fallen K9 service dog, her trembling hand pressed against his still body while police sirens thundered from all directions. Officers rushed in, but not to help her, at least, not at first. And in that single horrifying moment, bystanders froze, unable to decide whether they were witnessing a terrible mistake, or something far worse. No one could have predicted what would unfold in the next few minutes, or how it would forever change everyone who stood there that day. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and compassion for those who cannot defend themselves, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread more powerful stories like this. Lena was only 6 years old, but she had already experienced more fear and loss than most adults. Born with a degenerative eye condition, she had completely lost her vision by the age of 4. Her world became darkness, sound, and touch, but she never let herself fall into despair. What held her together was Max, her trained K9 service dog, a disciplined yet gentle German shepherd assigned to her after months of waiting. Max was not just her guide. He was her anchor to a world that she could no longer see, a guardian against every uncertainty that came with blindness, and her one constant companion in a life filled with challenges. Every morning, Lena walked confidently with Max to the small community school designed for children with special needs. Max led her around obstacles, nudged her gently when she veered off course, and stayed alert to every sound and scent that could pose danger. The two were inseparable. When she slept, he laid beside her bed; when she played, he guarded her; and when she cried, he placed his head on her lap until she calmed. The bond between them was deeper than anyone around them fully understood. But on one particular afternoon, everything changed. Lena had been walking home from school with Max, tapping her white cane gently along the sidewalk. She didn't know that a citywide alert had gone out minutes earlier, an armed suspect fleeing on foot, reportedly accompanied by a large German shepherd. Police units had swarmed the area, tensions running high, nerves stretched thin. Witnesses described the suspect's dog as aggressive, loud, and dangerous. In the chaos of radio chatter and adrenaline, details blurred together, details that would soon matter more than anyone could imagine. As Lena approached a crosswalk, Max suddenly stiffened. She felt the tension travel through his harness. His ears perked. His body lowered protectively. Something in the distance was alarming him. Lena tightened her small hand around the harness handle, whispering his name under her breath, but she didn't know what had triggered his reaction. Down the block, police officers turned the corner. They saw a German shepherd. They saw a small figure beside him. Their minds, clouded by fear and misinformation, processed the scene in the worst possible way. Without warning, officer commands erupted into the air. Lena heard shouting, sharp, aggressive, urgent. She turned her head blindly toward the voices, confused, gripping Max's harness with both hands. Max didn't bark, nor did he move aggressively. He simply stood firm, shielding her. But the officers didn't see a service dog stance. They saw a threat. In a split second, one of the officers made the decision that would haunt him for years. A flash. A loud cry. A thud. Max collapsed beside Lena, whimpering softly before going still. The girl felt the sudden fall, the slackness in the harness, and she dropped to her knees, screaming her dog's name into the void she lived in. Pedestrians gasped. Cars stopped. Someone shouted, "She's blind. The dog's a service dog." But the realization came too late. The officers froze, stunned. The truth slammed into them like a brick. This was not the suspect. This was not a threat. This was a blind child who had just lost her guardian because of their mistake. Lena shook uncontrollably as her hands searched Max's fur, patting frantically for any sign of movement. She couldn't see the blood. She couldn't see the officer's horrified expressions. All she knew was that Max wasn't responding, and the world around her suddenly felt emptier than ever before. Traffic lights blinked uselessly above the silent crowd. Officers approached slowly, but the bystanders formed a protective circle around the little girl, shouting, recording, demanding justice. The officers tried to speak to Lena, but she couldn't hear them through her sobs. She kept whispering Max's name, her fingers trembling on his fur. Then something unexpected happened. One officer, young, shaken, and visibly guilt-ridden, stepped forward. He knelt beside Lena, his voice cracking as he spoke gently, his hands open and empty to show he meant no harm. One of the bystanders touched Lena's shoulder and guided her hand toward the officer's uniform so she would understand who was speaking to her. When her small fingers felt the badge, she flinched. The officer, overwhelmed with remorse, promised her he would make this right, no matter what it took. He called urgently for emergency veterinary teams, not animal control. He removed his own uniform jacket and gently slid it under Max's head. He stayed beside her, shielding her from the noise and crowd, trying to comfort her even though he knew he could never undo what had been done. The city seemed to hold its breath as a specialized K9 medical unit arrived. Max was lifted carefully, his harness still in place. Lena refused to let go. Her hand remained on his side all the way to the emergency vehicle. The officers didn't stop her, they couldn't. They owed her far more than explanations. At the veterinary trauma center, surgeons fought for nearly an hour to stabilize Max. Lena sat outside the operating room, gripping his leash tightly, refusing to drink water or speak. The officer who had fired the shot stayed there as well, silent and broken, unable to look anyone in the eyes. When the vet finally came out, everyone rose to their feet. Max was alive, but barely. He had lost a lot of blood, and his recovery would be long and uncertain. But he had survived the first critical hurdle, something no one expected. Lena reached out, finding the vet's arm, and burst into relieved sobs that echoed through the hallway. Word of the incident spread across the city like wildfire. News stations reported a blind child service dog being shot mistakenly by police. Anti-police protests began forming. Crowds demanded accountability. The department faced immense pressure, and the officer involved was placed under internal review. The city prepared for what could become a massive scandal. But while everyone argued, one strange development unfolded quietly. Lena and the officer began forming an unusual connection. The officer, named Mark, though Lena never knew his face, visited Max every day. He brought toys, blankets, and special treats approved by the vet. He sat beside Lena and described the world around her so she wouldn't feel alone. He let her feel textures of items he brought so she could see them with her hands. He even requested training on how to properly interact with blind individuals, determined not to repeat the mistakes caused by ignorance. Lena, though initially afraid, sensed his sincerity. She forgave easily, because children often understand pure emotions more deeply than adults. She told him one day, her small voice trembling, that she didn't blame him. She only wanted Max to come home. Mark broke down crying beside her, not loudly, but silently, the way adults do when they're trying to be strong. He made her a promise, if Max survived, he would personally help train and support their bond again, no matter how long it took. Weeks passed, and Max slowly improved. The first time he lifted his head, Lena was there, her hand on his cheek. The first time he stood shakily, she whispered encouragement. And the first time he recognized her touch again, the entire vet staff cried. But the city still demanded justice. A hearing was scheduled. Mark insisted on testifying publicly. He explained the mistake, took full responsibility, and asked the community to focus on supporting Lena and Max rather than spreading hate. His honesty moved many. Some still wanted punishment, but others began seeing the tragedy for what it was, a human mistake with devastating consequences. The mayor visited Lena personally, offering therapy, legal help, and specialized support for Max's rehabilitation. Donations poured in from across the nation, from people touched by the story. Others shared their own experiences with disabilities, thanking Lena for inspiring them. When Max was finally ready to return home, the city organized a quiet welcome, not a parade, not a spectacle, but a gentle show of love. Officers lined the sidewalk, not in military stance, but in respect. Mark walked beside Lena, guiding her as Max trotted on her right, his gait slow but determined. For the first time since the incident, Lena smiled without crying. Over the following months, something remarkable unfolded. Mark, once shunned and accused of cruelty, became an advocate for disability awareness and K9 training reform. He worked closely with service dog organizations and pushed for mandatory training for all officers on recognizing service animals and handling situations involving disabled civilians. His efforts were not for redemption. He knew he didn't deserve applause, but for ensuring no child would ever suffer what Lena had endured.